Are you ready? I do not see the live on I did see it earlier and I don't see it now.
Mine says live.
Yours says live?
It says live on Facebook.
Okay, great. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kristi Villanueva with the West San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, and I am here with Commissioner Justin Rodriguez. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, Kristi, thank you for having me, and thanks for all the great work you're doing out at the West Side Chamber. So happy to be with you this morning or this
Thank
afternoon.
you.
It's been a long day.
Yes, no, I understand. So we are all trying to wrap our head around the new order that has been issued by Bexar County Commissioners Court and trying to help support our businesses in moving forward to do so. I know that there is a big mask distribution tomorrow.
Right.
And so why don't you get us started? Tell us how all this kind of came about.
Sure. So, to back up a little bit, we know that I guess several weeks ago, I mean, first and foremost, the data that we saw coming back was troubling, and we've seen over the last few days or week or so where we're getting back positive COVID results that are very, very troubling. It's a troubling trend. We're seeing several hundred more positive tests per day. We had hoped that the governor would essentially mandate that folks would wear face coverings, masks, if you will. The governor did not do that. He left it up to local communities to kind of craft their own safety protocol, so to speak. And last week, County Judge Nelson Wolf worked with our lawyers, the district attorney's office, to put an executive order in place that would require businesses to enforce the mandate for masks. So if you were to go out and you're a small business or any kind of business providing goods or services in our community, you would have to require that folks, as they come into your business, have face coverings. And so, as you mentioned, that went into effect yesterday, Monday. That executive order is effective through June 30th. So it's only about a week or so. Obviously, the hope is that this will stem some of the spikes that we've seen recently. We know that just the simple act of having a face covering, a mask, it is something that the science tells us will help prevent the spread of any germs, in this case, COVID. Not 100%, of course, but it's the next best thing to doing nothing.
Yes.
And so, in that vein, I asked the judge as he went about executing that order. I'm very familiar, having been at the school board level and city council, that oftentimes we get these what we call unfunded mandates from the state or federal government, where they say, "Here's a new law. You guys enact it locally, but we're providing zero money for you to do that."
Right.
So I'm very sensitive to that. And so I asked the judge for us to consider helping our small businesses with this implementation. We don't want to pit small businesses against the rest of the community. We're all in this together, as we've said often over the past few weeks. And so Bexar County committed to purchasing 1 million masks. And those will be distributed to our small business community over the next week or so. I'll give you more information later, but we have a distribution tomorrow, Wednesday, and another one this coming Saturday.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's going to be extremely helpful, because we're noticing on the west side and obviously throughout the city that many of our small businesses that have 25 and under number of employees are having the most difficulty. They're trying to keep up with the hand sanitizer, with the masks for their own employees, trying to figure out where to post the signs. And then on top of that, they don't want to get confrontational with any of their customers.
Yeah. And that's a tough position. And I get that, for small businesses to be in. It's tough to have to run your small business, number one, but then also to have to police your employees and customers. We're hoping that we have compliance that is, out of people's own goodness of their hearts, right? I mean, we want to protect each other. You hear often that I wear my mask to protect you, you wear yours to protect me. We want to make sure that the small business owners have at their disposal this supply of masks so that, number one, for their employees, but then secondly, if they have somebody that shows up that maybe forgot their mask, or isn't complying, that they simply ask them to have a mask, a face covering as they enter the business. We don't think it's
Yes.
too much to ask. Again, we don't want this to be punitive either, right? I mean,
Right.
I know we hear a lot about if it's not enforced, there's up to $1,000 fine on
Mhm.
businesses. What I've heard over the first day or so is both Bexar County Sheriff's Office and SAPD is doing its best to help educate small businesses, make sure they know about the order, or not the ordinance, but the order. And it's not something that is going to be used as a moneymaker for the county or the city. We would prefer not to find anybody, frankly. We
Right.
just want to make sure people are complying, and we believe that's in the best interest of public health. And
Mhm.
ultimately, too, it's, if you want to look at it this way, it's a little bit of short-term pain for hopefully long-term gain, in that no one wants another shutdown. I know for sure our small businesses don't. So,
Right.
we're hopeful that if we comply and people voluntarily comply, we can continue, again, gradually reopening business, but in a safe manner.
No, absolutely. And we definitely appreciate the point of view that the county has taken and all these precautions that you're moving forward with. And I know we did hear live from Sheriff Salazar to say he is on a mission to educate, he and his deputies. So that's very appreciative that we're coming in and we're
Yeah,
doing that positive outreach and reinforcement.
absolutely.
So if we continue to see this uptick in the numbers, I mean, it's going to be, it takes a little more than 2 weeks to kind of
Sure.
see where those trends are going. And we've just been up and up. So, as far as I know, we're not leaning towards any closures.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah,
this
I think
is
that.
this is our more of our sure thing. Wearing the mask, getting
Sure.
everybody in compliance across the board.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I hate to say, the new normal, because I think that's overused, but I think the more we can get used to conducting our daily business, if we have to go out in a safe fashion, that means covering your face, staying 6 feet apart. That's another key to
Mhm.
this. I know that I had anecdotal reports of businesses that were not complying with the capacity issues, the social distancing issues.
Mhm.
Um, I think by and large, our business community is complying and wants to comply. But the more I think that we can get folks to get this ingrained in them, that they, when they leave the house, they take a mask or a face covering with them. They go into a store, they do the same out of respect for everyone else. The more we can do that, I think hopefully we're more on a track of potentially recovering our economy, recovering our community, recovering, because we know that we're still probably months away from a vaccine.
Mhm.
And so we've got to get used to this way of operating, and being cognizant and conscious of what impacts our actions have on others. And we all want to see our small businesses succeed. And for us to do that, this was the next best logical step. And we were thankful that Judge Wolf put this in place, and on the other hand, that the governor didn't challenge it. So, I think it was the best thing for our community. And I think we saw a number of other counties follow suit. So I think people increasingly understand that it makes a difference when you can wear the face covering, and when you comply, it makes the community safer, and the public health situation less stressful.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And are there, as the conversations progress internally, are there any other things that maybe we might be keeping an eye out for, especially our business owners, on any education or opportunities or
Yeah, I mean, not that I'm aware of that are currently upcoming. I mean, look, this, as you know, this is a very fluid situation, and things are
yes.
changing almost daily. I do want to make sure that the small businesses that are watching know that there's still an opportunity to get the masks that
Mhm.
I mentioned at the beginning. There, you simply have to go to the website bear.org, bexar.org. There's a link to the mask registration. So you do have to register in advance, but then there's a distribution tomorrow, Wednesday morning at the Freeman Coliseum, and then on
Okay.
Saturday at Bibliotech South on Pleasanton Road. That's
Okay.
Saturday morning. We may have a third one depending on how much we get distributed. There may be one, and I'm hoping my staff's working on getting one on the west side and precinct
Yes.
2. So those are the main things, is making sure that if you're in need as a small business owner of these resources, please reach out. Several weeks ago, we also had a small business PPE giveaway, personal protective equipment, the kits that included some small supply of masks and gloves and sanitizer. There was even a thermometer in there.
Mhm.
So we still have a few of those. I can't speak for every precinct, but I know in our precinct, we still have a few left. So I would also encourage those small businesses, if you need that, in addition to the plexiglass, if you have a customer facing
Yes.
storefront, for example, they can certainly call our office and reach out, and we're certainly happy to accommodate. But those are the things that are probably most pressing. And we've got to have some data in terms of how this may impact that spike in cases over the next week or so. This order goes through the 30th, as I mentioned, but there
Okay.
is a pretty good chance, I can't speak for him, but if I had to guess, there's a decent chance that the judge may extend that order into July, just so that we've got enough data to see if it's actually making a difference. And we're hopeful that as people comply, that it will.
No, absolutely. And especially with July 4th weekend coming up, we know
Absolutely.
we had a spike for Memorial Day. We may have had another spike for Father's Day, and here we're coming up on another holiday.
Exactly, exactly. And it's hard, I mean, look, I enjoyed Father's Day with my family. And we also had, it was also graduation season. We had our own
Mhm.
son graduate. It's very difficult because those are obviously they're celebrations, and they should be cause for celebration for families. It's very, very hard when you can't, hug. My mom lives next door to me. I see her, but we can't go and hug her. That's very difficult for our community. And again, we have to keep in mind that the small things that we can do to keep our loved ones safe is again, to keep that distance, stay in touch in some other fashion. These are hard times for all of us, but I think it's important that we stick to it together, and we'll get
Yes,
through it. But it's no question, it's takes some getting used to, that's for sure.
absolutely. Well, I do have to ask you before we kind of shut this down and say goodbye. I do want to ask, from the point that COVID started
Mhm.
to this point today, what are your thoughts on the whole conversation that you're having in Commissioner's Court on, the food pantries
Mhm.
and getting the money to that, and more testing and public transportation, um, and job training? I
Yeah,
mean, there is a whole gamut of things that you have to worry about individually
sure.
and then with your colleagues. So, how do we help support you as a community and as business owners?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Christy, and there's no easy answer to it. We had issues in our community pre-COVID. We know that we were one of the most economically segregated communities in the country, one of the poorest big cities in the country. So this pandemic has underscored just how much of a need that we had in our community. It's exacerbated those needs. And in some way, we have to understand as a learning point, as public policymakers, how do we change the trajectory, right? How do we make our
Yes.
community more resilient so that we're not impacted by something like this in the future, so that people aren't in lines at the food bank distribution?
Yes.
And I've been out there a few times, and it's heartbreaking to see that. So to your point, it's a point in our history as a city, as a community, where if we don't change, then we're very, very apt to repeat what we don't want to see. And so you mentioned the investment in workforce training. That is something that we're having a discussion on. The county got about $80 million in CARES Act funding. We're planning to use at least half of that in workforce training. But part of that is, again, what jobs are going to look like a year from now or 18 months from now. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, but we've got to be smart about those investments and make sure it's a sustained type of training and upskilling for those in our community. You mentioned, the food and shelter piece. I was part of the work group that worked on really the triage part of that. How do we make sure people have a roof on their heads? How are they getting their daily meals? And that's also a conversation that's going to take more than just an influx of dollars at this point, but it's systemically, how do we change the affordable housing conversation, for example, in Bexar County? I think we've looked at ways to again, make that a more resilient process. We've looked at other communities, how they're doing that. We were fortunate in our work group to have the expertise of former HUD Secretary Henry Cisneros, our former mayor, who's worked in housing his entire career. So we have a playbook that we put in place through his help and others to, again, change the way we do that. What's troubling is right now we're dealing with, again, just stopping the bleeding. And we've got people who are going through the eviction process now. It's heartbreaking to see that. We're trying to figure out how can we help them through the rental assistance programs that both the city and county have. So at some point, again, we're in that reactionary phase. At some point, and we've started this already, we've got to turn to the recovery and resilience phase. And that is going to be key in terms of how we rebound as a community and become stronger. And it's going to take all of us. Look, I mean, the county is just one piece of it. The city's going to play a piece, the private sector, the public sector. I'm very hopeful, and I know that we're going to rebound from this, but it's not going to be easy. There is going to be some lumps that we take along the way. We unfortunately have already lost a number of folks. I think it's now close to 100 in Bexar County to this pandemic. Healthcare, the healthcare piece is huge, right? We've got people who don't have access. I'm one of those that believes healthcare is a fundamental right. People should have, regardless of zip code, access to healthcare, preventative healthcare, right? Not just when they need to go to the emergency room. So a lot of issues that we've got to work on. And, I think there's a lot of us, including, I know what y'all are doing at the chamber, who are ready to roll up our sleeves and work together on this.
No, absolutely. Well, we're going to continue here at the West Chamber to share the information that your office is putting out there, that the county in general is sharing, and we're going to make sure our business owners continue to stay informed. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here anytime.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone else for tuning in for our West San Antonio Chamber pop-up. We're here to bring you as much information as possible and get you connected to the right resources. Thank you so much, and we'll see you very soon. Give us a call if you need anything. Thank you.